This program contains subject matter and language that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Peace, tribe. Welcome to another episode of Our Story, 1968, Indian Civil Rights. Now, before we get started with this episode, I just want you to understand with this episode here, this episode is a continuation from last week's episode of Racial Slurs. So this one is the part 2. That being said, let's get into it, tribe. Our Story, 1968, Racial Slurs part 2.
Nigger. N-I-G-G-E-R. A dark-skinned person of any origin in early U.S., usually with reference to American Indian. American Indian. That means indigenous to America. When we speak about what's indigenous to America, we have to take in consideration foods that are indigenous to America. You know, sugar, corn, even tobacco. When you look at these things that are indigenous to America, like tobacco, whenever you go into a cigar shop or a tobacco shop, you'll always see a statue of a nigger. When you think about who's leading in cancer from tobacco, it's niggas. When you think about who have the most diabetes, which is called the sugars, it's niggas. When you think about whose hair look like cornrows and who's the children of the corn, that'd be niggas too. So when you think about things that are indigenous to America, the crops, the foods, the tobacco, cocaine is also indigenous to America. Who did it affect the most in the early 80s? Niggas. So when you think about indigenous foods and crops, tobacco and cocaine is from America, remember, niggas are from America too. And that's why we use these things so much, good or bad, genetic memory. Speaking of niggas, it was a comedian who went by the name of Paul Mooney who once said, everybody want to be a nigga until it's time to be a nigga.
They don't know our story. They don't know what we've been through, baby. They're all on the outside looking in. But we still gon' do what we want to. Touching conversations. A bunch of apologizing and explaining. But we live and we learn. Hey, I bet they ain't think that we would make it, but we overcame it. This shit ain't nothing to play with. Family over everything is still the same shit, and I wouldn't trade it for nothing. Nah, we've been through hell and back, but we're still standing. Standing on all 10. Hey, you know how we do it, we go all in. Yeah, it's us over everybody. Spot when it's trouble in paradise. Nosy motherfuckers wanna hear about it. Let's be clear about it. We don't make decisions based on their opinions. We can't expect, nor can we make them see the vision. As long as we know the business. Cause they don't know our story. They don't know what we've been through, baby. They're all on the outside looking in. But we still gon' do what we want to. Never said it would be easy, but when you commit this shit, you gotta keep on fighting for who and what you believe in. Believe me, cause I ain't going nowhere, baby. I'll be here till the end of time. Take no chances, I won't jeopardize. You know I won't, cause true love only happens once. I know my past ain't pretty, yeah, but she still ride with me, yeah. You see, this ain't for everybody. I when it's trouble in paradise. Nosy motherfuckers wanna hear about it. Let's be clear about it. We don't make decisions based on their opinions. We can't expect, nor can we make them see the vision. As long as we know the business. Cause they don't know our story. They don't know what we've been through, baby. They're all on the outside looking in. But we still gon' do what we want to.
This is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
I want to tell y'all something about the Native American Indians, okay? If you really look into them, you'll come to find out that they're never present for anything. You can never find them dealing with our story. They're never around. I have grandfathers who fought in the Revolutionary War. Him and his brothers, they fought in the wars here on this land, protecting the land. Him and his brothers. And when they finished, they went home to their acres and acres and acres of land. That's not a slave, y'all. That's not a slave. Slaves ain't owning acres and acres of land. But let's get back to what I'm saying. In 1968, there were some people out here fighting for Indian civil rights, public Indian housing, and they were fighting for the Indian Bill of Rights. Now, I've been asking the question, who were those Indians? Now, I want to show you how the Native Americans always seem to try to incorporate themselves into our story. After King's assassination, many of our people in over 100 cities in America began to riot, tear things up, because they were upset about the loss of one of our greatest leaders to date. Once again, those Native Americans were nowhere to be found in those riots. After the riots, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968. No Native Americans present for that signing. No Native Americans present for the riots. No Native Americans present for the Montgomery boycott. No Native Americans present for the Selma March. No Native Americans present for the freedom fighting. No Native Americans present for the Children's Crusade. No Native Americans present for anything dealing with our story. Yet they love to incorporate themselves into our story. So after King's assassination, let me show y'all how they try to incorporate themselves. After King's assassination, months later, the Native American Indians created the AIM movement, American Indian Movement. It was not the same movement as our Indian Civil Rights Movement. They were nowhere to be found in our Indian Civil Rights Movement. The AIM movement dealt with them, the Native Americans, trying to take over an abandoned prison out there in California. That's not in my history. That's not in my story. My elders never told me about us trying to take over an abandoned prison. Well, this is their story. Notice how we're not in their story. Notice how you don't see us in the pictures of them trying to take over an abandoned prison. That's because that's not our story. That's their story on the land. Also, after they tried to take over this prison, they did a thing called the longest walk, where it said they walked from San Francisco all the way across country to DC. Notice how we're not in that story either. That's their story, not our story. Our story took place over here in the southeast, east coast, northeast parts of the Midwest. You see how we're not trying to incorporate ourselves over into their story? Standing Rock, when they did the protesting for Standing Rock, you don't see us over there in their pictures or their videos. Why? Because that wasn't our story. But yet, let me show you how they try to come over into our story. After King's assassination in '68, They create the AIM movement. Now this is where they try to, as we say on the streets, mix the dope, confuse you. So you'll always hear the Native Americans keep bringing up the 1968 Civil Rights Act was about us. It was about us. It wasn't about you guys. Y'all are African. Well, let's make this make sense. Let's make this make sense. You guys were nowhere around. Nowhere around in any of this. You create the AIM movement after us, after King's assassination. You were nowhere, you didn't even show up to throw a rock in the desert when King was assassinated. Yet you came to us for help. You came to our leader, Dr. King, to help you guys. We're going to get into all of that next episode. But I want to show y'all how they tried to hijack our movement. Dr. King fighting for Indian civil rights was our last chance at connecting the American Indian Negro to who they are on this land. After he was assassinated, the movement was no more. But guess who came along with the American Indian movement to make it seem like what Dr. King was fighting for was the Native Americans. So they create the AIM movement to make it seem like Dr. King's Indian civil rights movement was about them. This is why you keep hearing them say, it was about us. It was about us. Well, I'm going to tell you this, Native Americans. Tick, tick, tick. Time's ticking. The truth is right around the corner. And we pulling covers off of y'all. We pulling covers off of all the lies. So, next episode, y'all might want to put y'all seatbelts on. Y'all might want to put y'all seatbelts on because this is about to get real brutal for y'all. Yeah. It's the age of information now. It's the age of information. Let's go. So family, I want you to pay very close attention to this video, okay? I'm going to help you understand what's going on here because the Native Americans will lead you to believe that in 1968, the Indian civil rights movement was about them, which it was not. That was dealing with the reclassified American Indian Negro. This is why you never saw them in the pictures. They were nowhere in our story because it wasn't about them. The Indian civil rights was not about them. The AIM movement, which came after King's assassination, was about them. So let's look at this. And I'm going to further show you how we know these are two separate incidents, two separate fights. So let's start with reason number one, so I can help you better understand that these were not the same fights. The Indian Civil Rights Act was not the same fight as the American Indian fight, okay? Reason number one, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968 into law on April 11th in 68. The AIM movement wasn't created until July of 1968. It was created after us, okay? So that clearly lets you know this was not the same fight. Reason number two, to help us better understand that this was not the same fight, that would be, look at the pictures, look at the videos. Here, I'll let you look through some pictures of the AIM movement. And notice, you won't see us, reclassified American Indian Negroes, in any of these pictures or their videos. The same way you won't see them in our Indian civil rights pictures and videos. Why would that be? Because they're not the same fights. Reason number 3 to help us better understand that these were not the same fights as the Native Americans would want you to believe. Reason number 3 is geographical locations. The AIM movement was created in Minnesota, and their situation took place on the West Coast, out in San Francisco. We weren't out in San Francisco. The Indian Civil Rights Movement was in the Southeast, East Coast, Northeast, and parts of the Midwest. So let's get this understood. These were not the same fights, but the Native Americans, if you don't know any better, will try to manipulate you to think that this whole civil rights thing, Indian civil rights thing, was about them and not us. Let's continue.
Many of us know about the Civil Rights Movement, which is when Black Americans heroically fought for social justice and equality during the 1950s and 1960s. Unfortunately, the American Indian Civil Rights Movement is often overlooked.
All right, let's pause right there for a second. Notice how the narrator of this video starts the video off, letting you know that these are 2 separate fights. They're not the same fights. Notice how he lets you know that there's a civil rights movement with Black America, and then there's an American Indian movement with the Native Americans. Notice that? Let's continue.
So what is it exactly? The American Indian Civil Rights Movement, or the American Indian Movement, AIM, as it's sometimes called, was established in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1968 by a group of activists, namely Dennis Banks, Clyde Belcourt, Eddie Benton Benai, and George Mitchell. It originally aimed to improve conditions for Native Americans who had been urbanized and were living in ghettos after government programs forced them out of their reservations. However, AIM eventually encompassed everything that American Indians were demanding.
Now try it. I want you to pay close attention to what you're listening to right now, okay? Remember, I told you the AIM movement was started after our movement, okay? After King's assassination is when the AIM movement started. Now, I want you to listen to everything that they were fighting for. I mean, is it just me, or does it sound damn near like everything we were fighting for with our civil rights movement? I'll explain that in a minute. Let's continue.
More specifically, it fought for economic independence, the revitalization of their traditional culture, the protection of their legal rights, autonomy over tribal areas, and the restoration of lands that they had owned but were illegally seized from them. The founding of AIM came nearly a decade after the Indian Relocation Act of 1956 was passed. Also referred to as Public Law 959 and the Adult Vocational Training Program, this legislation encouraged Native Americans to leave their reservations and traditional lands in order to assimilate into urban areas. Thousands of Native Americans did end up migrating to cities and other such urban areas. However, they experienced low-wage labor, substandard housing, discrimination, and violence. The initial activities of AIM were meant to help the Native Americans suffering in urban areas in Minneapolis. For example, they established the AIM Patrol to provide help and support to victims of police abuse. The organization also founded the Indian Health Board, which focused on providing Native-centric healthcare. As the years passed, AIM widened its focus to Native Americans outside of Minneapolis. For instance, it participated in the occupation of Alcatraz Island, which took place November 20th, 1969 to June 11th, 1971. This months-long protest saw 89 Native Americans and their supporters living on Alcatraz Island in the San Francisco Bay. They tagged buildings with slogans like "Red Power" and "Custer had it coming," in reference to George Armstrong Custer, the military commander known for his post-Civil War exploits against Native Americans. He's particularly famous for the 1876 Battle of the Little Bighorn, which has since come to be known as Custer's Last Stand. The Native Americans who participated in the occupation claimed that Alcatraz Island belonged to their people by right of discovery. However, the Nixon administration maintained that transferring the land to them was impossible. In the months that followed, the Native American population on Alcatraz Island swelled to more than 600. They even managed to form a governing council, a clinic, and a security force dubbed the Bureau of Caucasian Affairs, among other things. Unfortunately, their movement was quashed when they were forcibly removed by armed federal marshals. AIM participated in many other movements besides the occupation of Alcatraz Island. One of their most famous actions was the Longest Walk, which took place in July 1978 and saw a few hundred people trekking from Alcatraz Island in San Francisco, California. By the time they arrived in Washington, D.C., the marchers had swelled to more than 30,000. The Longest Walk hoped to raise awareness for the problems plaguing Native American communities across the United States, such as the lack of job opportunities and inadequate housing. Perhaps its biggest achievement, though, was the signing of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, which lifted the ban on Native American spiritual ceremonies, which had been outlawed since 1884. Unfortunately, AIM's national leadership disbanded later that year due to infighting, jealousy, and the FBI's alleged efforts to divide them. Fortunately, several local chapters remained active afterward.
All right, now in a previous episode, I wanted to show y'all how the Native American Indians have this thing of going all over social media, and they say that the reclassified American Indian Negro is stealing their culture. Now, I believe it was last episode or a couple episodes ago, I actually walked through everything on this land to see exactly what their culture is. And what I came to learn is, in all honesty, the Native American Indians don't have much of a culture. And the culture that they do have doesn't fit our culture here on this land. One thing I have to understand is, how is this your land? But the reclassified American Indian Negro has a lot more influence on your land than you have on your own land. Yeah, that'll be probably next episode. Yeah. Remember I told you, we finna put that pressure on. We finna stop playing the games. You're about to stop telling us who we are and who we're not. We don't have to answer any questions on this land about who we are. We have the right to self-identify, and we know what our people told us. So with that being said, I want to take y'all somewhere. Let's go dig into racial slurs of the Native American Indians. Oh man, this is about to get good. The map ain't mapping. And somebody got some questions.
Yeah, Indians, niggas, same thing.
Niggas, Indians, same thing. That famous line from movie Ghost Dog, Indians are niggers. Niggers were fighting for Indian civil rights in 1968. Dr. King said, Niggers were here before the Pilgrims. He also said niggers found themselves in exile in their own land. What exactly would a nigger's own land be? And he's living here in North America. Niggers were found here on the land before Columbus. Niggers eat cornbread. Cornbread is called Indian bread. Niggers eat soul food. Soul food is the food of the land of North America. North America had niggers here before Columbus and the Pilgrims arrived. Niggers used the term red. That's not a racial slur to niggers at all. Your elders told you in the past that they were Indians. Indians are niggers. Niggers, aka Indians, were fighting with Dr. King in 1968 for Indian
At the same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm.
Some of those same nigger entertainers were marching with Dr. King in 1968, fighting for Indian civil rights. So if we're connecting all of these nigger dots, then those nigger dots should lead you right back to your elders in this land of North America. Or is your dots, for some reason, leading you to some strange land across the waters with no specific family to connect to or specific area? Well, mine leads me right back to my granny, my mama, my daddy, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my elders of my culture, who said they were not Africans, they were Indians. They are niggers. And if we let the Italians tell it, they'll say,
Yeah, Indians, niggas, same thing.
So now I have to ask this question. Now that we're establishing that niggers are Indians and Indians are niggas, why would, if we're not the people of the land, why would we have all of these nigger terms in the racial slur database of Native Americans? Make that make sense? I mean, let's just take, for example, let's look at one example. Let's go to prairie nigger. What is a prairie nigger? Let's just take a look into prairie nigger. Okay.
Prairie View A&M. Let's look at this. It was founded in 1876. It is one of Texas' 2 land-grant universities and the second oldest public institution of higher learning in the state. PVAMU is the largest HBCU in the state of Texas and the 3rd largest HBCU in the United States.
Well, let's check out some notable Prairie View alumni, DJ Premier, Meg Thee Stallion.
I'm a savage, attitude nasty. Talk big, but my bank account match it. Hood, but I'm classy. Rich, but I'm ratchet. Haters kept my name in their mouth, now they gagging.
Doro the rapper.
I say, yeah, buddy. Rolling like a big shot. Chevy tuned up like a NASCAR pit stop. Fresh paint job, fresh inside. Is the outside frame in the trunk wide? Or the rims big? Do it right.
Kurt Cobain.
I done came down, hold up. I done came down, hold up. Grip the grain, roll up. And your girlfriend want a nigga like me, cause I ain't tryna control.
All of these folks are prairie niggas. HBCU College in Texas. How about that? HBCU. Sounds like a bunch of niggers going there. It's a whole lot of niggatry going on in this racial slur database of Native Americans. I mean, make that make sense. Make it make sense. Oh man, whoa. Hey, I don't know about y'all, but this is getting very interesting, right? Man, the math ain't mathing, as the youngsters say, right? Check this out. Things ain't adding up, right? Now, racial slurs, whoa. Well, if you're the natives of the land, then how are these racial slurs for you? I've never heard Native Americans referred to as niggers. Never. Whoa. Yeah, this is getting very good. Hey man, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Make it make sense. You don't have to argue with people today who's trying to tell you about who your people are. Just connect dots. These Pan-Africans can't tell you where they're from on their land, but they want to tell you everything about who your people are on this land. You don't have to answer anything dealing with them. They got bigger fish to fry somewhere over there in Africa. Somewhere. They don't even have a family to connect to in Africa, but want to talk to you about yours on your land. Yeah, you don't have to argue with anybody. They got bigger fish to fry. But if you're really connecting dots, nigger dots that is, it should lead you right to your people right here on the land. Niggas. Now here's what I want to show you guys. I want you to pay close attention to this right here. You're probably wondering why I'm about to show you this Larry Elders and Charlemagne video. Well, I want you to watch this because remember last episode I showed you Shannon Sharp and I told you there's just no way in 2023 this man doesn't know about the reclassified American Indian Negroes of North America. And he was disrespecting Kyrie Irving, who was trying to tell other niggas to talk to their family, see if they could find their tribe, genealogy. And he disrespected Kyrie. So we had to side-eye Mr. Shannon Sharp last episode. Well, we also got to side-eye people like Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club and people like Tariq Nasheed. When you hear people always talking about systemic racism, the white man this, the white man that, oppression this, oppression that, slavery this, slavery that. They like to hold on to victimhood. They like to hold on to that victim mentality. That's that victim mentality that we were taught in school by the so-called oppressor who told us they found us in jungles somewhere in Africa. They're the ones that want to keep slavery on your shoulder. They're the ones that want to keep systemic racism on your shoulder. They're the ones that want to push Black Lives Matter. They're the ones that want you to, they're the ones that love to talk about buck breaking this and buck breaking that and white supremacy this and white supremacy that, and we're so oppressed. And that's those people. Those are those Democrats. See, there was a bad thing that happened in 68 with the signing of that Indian Civil Rights. L.B. Johnson said, I'm going to have these niggas voting Democrat for 200 years. And our people were Republicans. And y'all hate Trump so much. Y'all hate Larry Elder so much. Y'all hate people that want you to pull yourself up and make something of yourself. Do something. Y'all love these Democrats who want to keep you oppressed, who want you to talk about slavery, systematic racism, buck breaking, white supremacy. Yeah, this is the same party as the Ku Klux Klan. Now I get it. Some of y'all say they're all the same. I get it. I'm just saying, our people were Republicans back in the day. When did y'all become Democrats? Let's think about that. Same party as the Ku Klux Klan.
Have you ever heard of the term wake-up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part.
They are not ready for someone who's thoughtful, right? Larry Elder isn't talking out of emotion. Larry Elder is talking with facts, and he's thoughtful about the things he's saying. Charlemagne and these other people, which you're going to see, I'm probably going to make like 10 videos about this because the whole hour Larry Elder's eating them alive. What they're going off emotions, not statistical data. They're going off emotions, not logic. They're hypocrites, and Larry Elder is going to point it out. Now, let me say,
what do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No, there
racism?
used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
There's so many.
The most important one, you think?
At the top of mind, I probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, you know. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president.
I got to stop it, y'all, because Breakfast Club, because they got smoked on this one. They probably don't want people reviewing it. So I got to stop it and do my due diligence to respond and give commentary. So every now and again, I may stop the video to talk about it. But look, what is he saying? Can Charlemagne respond to this? Can anybody respond to this? Larry Elder is on fire. I mean, it's no response. I've been waiting for this forever. Roll the clip.
The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the three largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected. And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard.
God, I'm trying to keep it going, y'all, but the most fact, it's just like, what is Charlemagne going to say to this? There is no ifs, ands, or but of what Larry Elder is saying. It's not even a thing. You cannot rebut that.
Have you ever heard of the term wake up call?
See, look how he go. He couldn't respond to nothing that Larry Elder said. Now he changing the subject called N-word wake up call. Now watch Larry eviscerate him on this one as well. He did not respond to Larry.
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I can't even watch this without being like, dude, this is such a beatdown. Come on, Charlemagne, what you got?
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney, because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seems to me that should have been a wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
Yeah, I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation. Yeah, I'm just saying, but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say, think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black. 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
As I said to him in that moment, it's just about me wanting something for my people. And I want to know, what is he going to do for my people? And not only for my people now, how are you going to atone for the things you've done to my people?
Right.
That's it.
Right. And this is a guy, Joe Biden, who, when he first got into the Senate, hung out with segregationists, talked about how well he got along with them, talked about how he didn't want integration because of a jungle. This guy has made all sorts of insulting things to black people, and his policies right now are hurting black people. Inflation hurts the people at the bottom more than anything else. Letting a bunch of illegal aliens into the border are hurting black people more than anybody else, as I said earlier. He opposes school choice when he has his own kids in private school. And we lost a year, almost 2 years of in-school education in California because of COVID that he supported. I mean, this guy has done monstrous things to black people. And then for him to come in here and tell you how you ought to think as a black person, it blew my mind.
What's happening, tribe? Hey, check this out. I want to take a second, right? And I want to give you a true story, okay? I want to take a second and talk to my Pan-African family, okay? All of my people that want everyone to be from Africa. They want us to believe the slave trade story. They want us to believe what the oppressor gave us about our history, okay? I want to talk to y'all for a second. Now, this is a true story. All the way true story, 100% true story, okay? So while I'm on the internet and I'm trying to attempt to help present this information to our people about the American Indians of this land, right? I've been called and attacked by Pan-Africans who say I am, or pro-black people who say I am ashamed to be from Africa, or I'm ashamed to be African, or I'm ashamed to be black. You feel what I'm saying? And I'm trying to claim somebody else's culture. That's what they say. True story, all the way true, right? Know some people. I actually know people who have told me, pro-black people, Pan-Africans, who have actually told me that some elder, and it's usually not even an elder that's far off, it's an elder in their family who told them that they have Indian in them or that they are Indian, right? It's usually someone not that far off. But here's the thing. I'm called a sellout because I tell you that I'm an American Indian. Yet, you have an elder also in your family who's telling you that they're Indian too. Let's move into the 1968 Civil Rights Act. 1968 Civil Rights Act. AKA the Indian Civil Rights Act. So, not only am I telling you I'm an Indian and you call me a sellout, you call me a sellout and you say I'm ashamed of being African. But when I ask you, has anyone in your family ever told you you were African? None of you would tell me yes. I've only met a few people who actually had ties to Africa, and they were able to show how they trace back to Africa, but not just the whole continent. They actually trace their family to somewhere in Africa. So they are able to call themselves who they are in Africa. Now, most of you can't do that. Most of you can't do that, okay? So you call me a sellout because I tell you I don't come from Africa, because I've done my genealogy on my family, and nowhere do we have an African story in our genealogy. We come from Alabama, both sides of my family. Alabama, Bessemer, Mound Builders. We come from down there. You feel what I'm saying? And we migrated. We migrated up into Virginia, Ohio, New York, Detroit. We migrated. My family migrated. You feel what I'm saying? But you can't tell me anything about your African family. But you tell me I'm ashamed of being African. You call me a sellout. Now back to what I'm saying. I'm telling you, I'm from this land. My family is from this land. You feel what I'm saying? You tell me you have elders telling you in your own bloodline, who you come from, that's telling you they had Indian in them and they were Indian. Not to mention, there was a whole Civil Rights Act that went on called, nicknamed the Indian Civil Rights They were fighting for public Indian housing, which is today Section 8. Okay? Now let's stop and think about this, right? You call me a sellout, right? Because I choose to listen to my family, but you choose to listen to what the oppressor told you about you. And I'm choosing to listen to my family and my elders and my bloodline that says, we don't have no slave story. There's other people out there. Have y'all ever heard the elders on this land that told you, we ain't black, and we ain't come from no slaves, and whoop-de-whoop, y'all have never heard those elders say that? Y'all don't never look into what they're talking about? And then some of them that were slaves on this land, do you not realize that there were tribes that enslaved other tribes? The Indians were fighting Indians on this land? Everybody didn't come from Africa, and we're not saying nobody came from Africa. But we have to make some things make sense. Now, you call me a sellout because I'm telling you I'm Indian. Your elder is telling you they're Indian, but you don't call them a sellout. But guess what you do? You disrespect your elder by telling them, hey, they were lied to about Jesus too. They were lied to about Jesus too. This is what y'all say. True story. I'm called a sellout because I choose to listen to my own bloodline. You don't think my blood knew who they were? You don't think these people knew who they were? You don't think your elder and your family knew who they were when they said they had Indian in them or they were Indian? You don't think those people in the Civil Rights Act that were fighting for Indian civil rights? Now remember, this is all from the South, up the East Coast, to the Northeast, and to the Midwest. These was a bunch of colored people, melanated people, fighting for Indian civil rights. You don't think these people knew they were Indian? Remember, let's stop. It's a fact. We don't have to guess this. We don't have to guess about this. It's documented. It's a fact that the American Indians of this land were reclassified to colored people. This is why some of your grandparents and elders have a C on their birth certificate, because they were reclassified from whatever Indian tribe they were called. They were reclassified from that. They couldn't call themselves that. They were not allowed to do that. That's nothing we have to guess about. That's an actual fact that happened. So if you find out that your elder in your family was called colored, right? And then we look at the N-word in the Oxford Dictionary, section 3, which describes the dark-skinned people of this land. The N-word tells you they were American Indian. The same thing your elder told you they were Indian. And if it makes sense, the Indian was reclassified to colored, the Negro.
Even on Congress.gov. Matter of fact, I got on my phone right now. I'm about to pull it up. Shit, receipts. So boom, you go to Congress.gov, right? You type in H.Rep 110 to 124, right? And then you want to see Thomasina E. Jordan, Indian Tribes of Virginia Federally Recognized Act, right? You go on there, and then you're going to scroll down to 57. And when you scroll down to 57, you're going to see something very, very important. Boom, you scroll to 57, and it says in plain sight, the Virginia Vital Statistics Bureau, right? Why is that important? Why is the Virginia Vital Statistics Bureau important? Because that's where Walter Plecker was the head of. So, I'm about to reiterate again. Boom. The Virginia Vital Statistics Bureau classed all non-reservation Indians as Negro. Who were the Negroes in history? They classified them as Negroes, so we gotta ask these questions. Who were these Negroes?
And if it makes sense, the Indian was reclassified to colored, the Negro, right? And black. African American, right? Now let's keep going, right? Civil rights. You mean to tell me all of those people marching up and down and fighting for civil rights in 68 didn't know they were Indian? I find that hard to believe, right? Because here's the thing, if my elder was back in civil rights, and they know they were Indians, right? 68 wasn't that far off that long ago. Your elder in your family told you they were Indian. 68 wasn't that long ago. Civil rights wasn't that long ago. Wasn't that far off. You don't think those people during that time knew? Wait a minute. Let's look at some people, okay? Civil rights time. You had James Baldwin telling you he was an Indian. Chuck Berry was telling you he was an Indian. Oh, these were civil rights time, right? You had Morgan Freeman back there telling you he's an Indian. Who else? Shaka Khan was telling you she was an Indian. Who else you have? Who else we had out here? Whoa. Thomasina Jordan, who helped the Indians in civil rights, went up there in Virginia and helped the Indians. She knew she was an Indian. Wait a minute, civil rights. You had a whole civil rights leader right there in Charlotte, North Carolina, who clearly told you he wasn't no African, he was American. You feel what I'm saying? And he was fighting for the rights of the Negroes, Indian civil rights also. Wait a minute, you had the Jackson family, Michael Jackson, the whole family knew they were Indian during that time. This wasn't that long ago. There's people still here today who can still tell you about the Children's March in Birmingham. There's a documentary just came out. These people were here. They were called N-words, which is an American Indian. They were called colored people, which the American Indian was reclassified to, right? Wait a minute. Now, this gets even better. The man who's spearheading, the man who's leading the charge on the American Indian civil rights, his wife, he sleeps with a woman every night. He has children by a woman, an Indian woman who knows she's Indian. You don't think they had these conversations about them being Indian? How do you attach Indian to the civil rights movement? And these people don't know. Homestead Act speech. What's the key word there? Home. Home. His wife, clearly an Indian. You don't think they knew? People had conversations. You don't think these people knew who they were? You see how you disrespect your elders? But you call me the sellout. Now I gotta ask a question. Who's really the sellout here? Who's really ashamed of being who they are? Because I'm choosing to rock with my blood. They knew who they were. You're choosing to rock with the oppressor's information that he gave you and told you who you are. And he only gave you a part of the story. He's trying to tell you after you came from the jungle or before you came from the jungles, they got you from the jungles. We don't know what your history was. And then they try to tell you they wiped your history out. Yet you get here on this land, you come into this earth, and your elders is telling you, we ain't got no slave. I wasn't no slave, and we ain't come from no slave story. And what are you talking about, black? We don't swim. Hey, boy, that was fighting word. This is what your elders is telling you. Everything your elders told you, you're choosing to go against because you choose to go with what the oppressor told you or some nigga on YouTube told you to believe. Come on, man. Who's really the sellout here? Who's really ashamed of being who they are? That's a lot of people who know they were Indians on this land. And you're trying to tell them what the white man told you, that they're from over the water somewhere. And they're clearly telling you, no, I'm not. I'm from Alabama. I'm from Mississippi. I'm from Florida. I'm from Georgia. I'm from Virginia. I'm from the Carolinas. I'm from Ohio. I'm from the Midwest. That's what they're telling you. But you choose to try to tell them who they are because the oppressor told you who you are. Instead of doing your genealogy and finding out where your people came from, who you're attached to, you rather call me a sellout for taking the time and finding it serious enough to find out who I am, while you still claim a whole continent. You claim a whole entire continent because you don't know who you are. So who's really the sellout? Who's really the sellout here? You won't even listen to your own family, your own bloodline. You won't even put the dots together on why these people were marching for Indian civil rights. You won't even put that together. Because you are content on being from somewhere away from home, while other people are being content with pushing you away to come in and take your spot on the land. You can't protect the house if you're across town. You can't protect the house if you're not in it. You're more of a threat to protect your home if you're at home and you know this is your home. Think about that. I mean, I can explain it to you. I can't help you understand it. You gotta understand it for yourself. Try it.
All right, tribe. So before we get out of here, let's end this on a good note. So on our last episode, I showed you guys how the Native Americans protested the name of the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians to have the team logo and name removed, stating that it was offensive and it was racial slurs. Now, as we just got done going through last episode and we got done going through this episode, remember I told y'all the math ain't mathing. Also, as we look at the footage of the Native Americans out there protesting, there wasn't a lot of them. Look at the footage. Pull up the footage. There was not a lot of Native Americans out there. But see, tribe, this is the reason I tell you guys we have to come outside. We have to get into our communities and we have to show a presence of who we are. Because those little group of Native Americans were able to have the team name and logo taken off of our teams without any pushback from us. We didn't show up to counter protest to show that, wait a minute, that's not them on that logo. That name isn't offensive. We didn't show up. So this is what happens when we don't come outside, when we don't get in our communities. Okay, so for the person that asked me on a live one day, do we have to come outside? No, you don't have to do anything. But understand this is how it happens to you, okay? We want to change some things. Nobody's changing anything sitting in their living room on the couch, begging for donations. Okay? So we have to get in our community. We have to communicate with each other. We have to organize. So now, since the last episode, we're looking at the Washington Redskins are now fighting to get the name replaced on their team, the name and logo. Now, here's the thing. Of course, they're not going to say the real reason why they're trying to get the team name and logo back, but I'll tell you the real reason. It was what I showed you in last episode and what I just showed you in this episode. That's the real reason. The people are coming out and fighting back and saying we want our team back. Even the Native Americans are joining forces. Let me tell you why. Because I'm sure that football team had a very good relationship with the Native American Indians. And the Native American Indians, they knew that logo and that name wasn't them. They know that. But guess who was complaining? It wasn't so much the Native Americans. Guess who's the complainer? It's the white folks. You know, the ones that's in the tribes. The $5 Indians. Yes, it's them. It's them. The ones that look like this. Pale. They don't have any copper. They're not the description of who they say the people of the land are at all. The Hollywood Indians, the white folks in the tribes, in the native tribes, the white folks that we see when we go to the Indian mounds walking around because they think this is their culture and it's not. Yeah, that's who was doing the complaining. And the Native Americans are telling on them. So even now, the Native Americans are standing with us, fighting for the team name to come back to Washington, D.C. And I would like to say, being from Cleveland, Ohio, I stand in agreement with this. I support it. And I beg that Cleveland, you follow suit. You follow suit. Because Chief Wahoo is not those Native American Indians either. Yeah, so shout out to Washington. Shout out to the people in Washington, Chocolate City, who's fighting for their team name to come back. Cleveland. Get on board, man. Let's do this. Get your team back, man. Get your name back. We are the Indians of this land. Peace, tribe. See you next episode. Oh, we going in next episode, by the way. Native Americans. I told you, put your seatbelt on. See you next episode. Our story, 1968. Indian civil rights. What happened to those Indians?
When longtime NFL owner Dan Snyder was essentially forced to finally sell the team, there was a lot of people that were expecting, you know what, maybe there might be another name change around the corner. Obviously, the Washington Commanders, previously known as the Washington Football Team, and of course, since their inception, known as the Washington Redskins, until some woke freaks got so offended they pressured Dan Snyder into changing it. Well, one thing I'm sure some people didn't expect was for that name change to potentially go back to the original. And over the last few weeks, we have seen a rise in the number of people that are calling and demanding that the Washington Commanders finally erase the mistake they made a few years ago and go back to their roots, return to the Washington Redskins name, including Native American groups. Native American groups threatens boycott if Washington Commanders don't change name back to Redskins. And of course, throughout this entire saga, that has been such a big misconception that, oh, the Native Americans are so upset, they're so offended by this, when in reality, if you look at study after study, poll after poll, it showed that actually the vast majority of Native Americans, somewhere between 85 and 90%, completely were in support of the name. They loved that this team had a history and that they partnered with Native American groups and tribes to get them out there to celebrate them. It was something that they were rooting for and they enjoyed. Yet a bunch of white liberals got offended by the name and essentially forced Dan Snyder to change it. But now you have groups that are saying, we are going to boycott this team if you don't change it back to the original. The Native American Guardians Association posted a meme to its X account with the message to educate, not eradicate, and wants the team to go back to its original name. The group, led by founder Eunice Davidson, sent a letter to the owners and execs of the Washington Commanders, formally requesting the team revitalize its relationship with the American Indian community and rightfully change their name back to the Redskins. The letter blasted the team for engaging in cancel culture by dumping its more than 90-year-old name, and said by getting rid of the name, they're eradicating Native American culture. And when you look across the landscape as well, you can see that there's been a petition that's been gaining steam lately. And as we speak, it has nearly 100,000 signatures. It's sitting there at 91,000 people, almost 92,000, have signed this petition, changed the Washington Commanders' name back to the Washington Redskins. I would assume, because you're getting a couple more headlines, this is going to start ballooning up. There is a lot of people out there, like we said, including the group that's supposed to be offended by all of this, who wants the name back as the Redskins. Now, with the new ownership group, could there potentially be that movement, that push to do it? There could be. I would still not bet on it because I think that the NFL is being so fucking woke and so concerned about social justice and not offending anybody over the past couple of years. I don't know if they're going to allow that to happen, to be quite honest with you. But the very fact that you're seeing this renewed call to do that, especially by the group of people that's supposed to be offended, it says a lot. And I do think people miss that name. The Washington Commanders is a terrible name. It just is. You would be better off going back to the Washington Football Team. At least that was meme-worthy. But the Washington Redskins is what people grew up on. That's what people were rooting for. That's all the merch they've had for years and years and decades and decades. 80 fucking years. And people want that back. So very interesting to see.